The reason why I think I went into studying engineering is because of problem solving. I'm from Borno State in the northeast of Nigeria, and one of the biggest issues that we face from there is the lack of electricity.
The story of my journey into the sector would be incomplete without mentioning all of the people that held my hands when I came in, my colleagues whose technical experiences I was able to draw from.
The beauty about working in this space is that you work with a lot of experts, so I'm never afraid to ask questions.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this episode of What's with the Grid, a conversation with women in the power sector. This morning, we have a very special episode where I salute and pay respect to some of the younger women who I've worked with, Amazons in their own right. As you may be aware, our listening audience, this podcast is facilitated by the Women on the Grid Hub. The Women on the Grid Hub is a network that brings together female senior managers who work in the on-grid space in Nigeria's power sector. One of the things which the hub focuses on is mentoring and modeling. And so today's episode of What's with the Grid is dedicated to a conversation with Generation Next. And here with me to do justice to that are three young Amazons, very impressive women, often working behind the scenes, but I see them as a powerhouse behind a lot of the work that I have been involved with, a lot of the work we do in UKNIAF and beyond. First, and in no particular order, we have Adeola Adebisi, seasoned finance and energy professional spanning 14 years of experience across investment banking, energy infrastructure, management consulting, and public sector advisory across sub-Saharan Africa. She previously worked as a special advisor to the Lagos State Commissioner for Energy and Mineral Resources and is currently portfolio manager, power component at the United Kingdom Nigeria Infrastructure Advisory Facility, UKNIAF. She's also a certified chartered accountant. Now, I have a huge question for you about that. But welcome, Adeola. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
And also here in the room is Aisha Mala Sheriff. Aisha is an electrical engineer qualified in Canada with a master's in information management. She's worked in development finance institution. She has vast experience and currently works as project officer at Tetra Tech International Development, where she bosses us around on the UKNIAF program. Bosses us around nicely. Welcome, Aisha. Nice to have you at the table.
Thank you so much, Stella.
And last but very definitely not the least is Doose Iortyom. Doose works with Nextier Group as a research analyst. And for those of you who may not know, Nextier powers these podcasts. They facilitate, they're the ones who are giving us traffic signals and holding up red, green, and yellow cards for us while the podcast is ongoing and do a lot of hard work to put it together so we can run with it at the end of the day. Doose was actually the one who taught me how to write podcast synopsis. She holds a bachelor's degree in accounting and a certification in global energy and climate policy. While at Nextier, she supported the United Kingdom Nigeria Infrastructure Advisory Facility in several capacities and has also worked on several projects funded by donor agencies like USAID Power Africa and the Africa Development Bank. Doose, you are most welcome.
Thank you, Stella. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much, everyone. So, let's dive into it. Adeola, what on earth is a chartered accountant doing in the power sector? Explain yourself.
Okay. Hi, Stella.
Hi there.
Thank you for having me. That's a really great question. I know at first glance it would appear that infrastructure and finance are like at different ends of the spectrum, but they are really not. They are deeply interconnected. And most of the infrastructure projects are some of the most capital-intensive projects. And so finance brings them to life. Really. And so from a personal angle though, after having done about a decade of work in the investment banking space, especially the project finance space, infrastructure was a natural evolution to me. And for different reasons, it aligns with my passion for socioeconomic development, which I'm very big on. And it also plays into my objective of creating multiple streams of impact through my work. So for me, I was looking for impact beyond the profit, So in the infrastructure space, it's a space where you can see tangible impact of your work. So it goes beyond just numbers on a spreadsheet, It's about driving change, enabling businesses thrive, improving lives of people. So for me, it fits right into the model that I was looking to build for my career. And so there's that. And then the third way I'll answer that question is The infrastructure space is such a critical space to Nigeria's development. It's a lifeline, really, to all that we do. So it requires everybody. It requires all experts from different fields, the finance guys, the engineers, the legal professionals, environmental experts, policy advisors. Everybody has to get in, and each perspective is essential to solving some of the complex challenges of the space. So, and it's always interesting to see how all these different experts come together to collaborate to deliver infrastructure projects. So.
Okay, a couple more questions coming from there, but let me allow the other two guests to introduce themselves. Aisha, engineering. Some of the work we did recently around STEM advocacy, where we had sessions with young female engineers in their final year in the university. And we also had a mentoring session as well with young girls who were in JS3 at that point where they're supposed to be trying to decide whether to go into the science or the arts. And the types of feedback we were getting about, we're women and we're girls and we're not expected to do things like engineering and numbers specific things like mathematics and the STEM subjects. So I'm just wondering, how did you end up studying engineering? Was this something you really wanted to do, or how did you end up there?
That's a very good question, Stella. And thank you for giving us the platform to speak about ourselves.
You're welcome.
Growing up, you'd look at books and the first thing you'd see when you look at like a picture of an engineer is a man's picture,
Absolutely.
And I really resonate with those young girls that were, really confused if they should go into this path, because for me, I would speak on myself, and the reason why I think I went into studying engineering is because of problem solving, because the basis of it all is engineering is actually problem solving. And I saw myself as a young child. I'm from Borno State in the northeast of Nigeria, and one of the biggest issues that we face from there is the lack of electricity, and similar to almost all the parts of Nigeria. So this might sound very naive as a young girl, I would go home and then I'll be like, why don't we have constant electricity and we have an excess of sunlight? So when I was trying to pick my path to study something, I said, okay, you know what, I'm going to go study engineering just so I can come back and create something spectacular that would make us have constant electricity here.
Oh, wow.
So very naive, but that was the reason as a young girl, let me go study engineering for that.
Might not be so naive, though. Very inspiring, I would say.
Yes. So, as a child, one of the first things you'd learn in school would be like, okay, making solar energy, you just need the sun, and then maybe some arrows would point at a solar panel, and next thing there's electricity. Obviously, there are more technicalities involved. And after I went to school, I really understood that it's not as easy as that. So, yeah, in a simple statement is that, it's just problem solving, really.
That's an interesting take on engineering, right? You just fix the problem. No space to talk too much. No room for the verbose narratives and all of that. Just get to work and solve the problem. Interesting. So Doose, I'm sure you see that I'm heading your way. So how did you get where you are? You are smack in the middle of Nextier. Everyone knows Nextier for their work in the power sector. I mean, they do a lot of other things, but they really do pop up when you talk about the power sector, not just in Nigeria, but in the sub-region. What was the pathway that led you there? Would you like to share that with us, please?
Thank you so much, Stella, for that question. I would say for me, it all began in 2022. So I had gone out with a friend and I just mentioned that I was exploring new opportunities. And they said there was this internship position opening up in their office and if I was interested in sending in an application. I wasn't sure at the moment because, as you know, accounting and the power sector, at the time, I wasn't sure how this would work. I wasn't sure how I would fit into the space and I was a bit skeptical. However, I took the leap of faith and sent in my application, went through a series of interviews and I got the position. I must confess, when I came in, the first few weeks were quite overwhelming. All of the technical jargons that I had to, or would I say terminologies that I had to sit through. I mean, I would be in meetings and I would be looking up an acronym just to ensure that I was following up with the conversation that was going on. However, I just stayed curious. I asked questions. I took courses, just immersed myself in learning. As well, just being a Nextier sort of affords you the opportunity to attend industry events. Through these events, I was also able to learn from some of the experts there. I was able to get conversant with the key players, key actors within the industry. And coming in, I thought I would have to maybe dump my accounting degree somewhere, but I realized that it came in handy every now and then, and it became an asset rather than a limitation. And it's allowed me carve out a niche for myself in areas like project budgeting, finance, resource management. It's also become sort of like a bridge to a whole new field. And this experience also inspired me to further my studies in climate finance, just to deepen my expertise and strengthen my impact within the sector. In retrospect, I'm just glad that I said yes to that opportunity, even though at the time it seemed so out of my comfort zone. In addition, I think the story of my journey into the sector would be incomplete without mentioning all of the people that held my hands when I came in, all of my colleagues whose technical experiences I was able to draw from, some of whom were women. That is why I think that the work that the Women of the Grid is doing is really impactful and timely, just ensuring that when young girls like me who have little to no prior experience come into the sector, they have an avenue to just access mentorship and just have someone hold their hand or do the hand holding at the early stages of their career. I think it's truly commendable. For me, that's how I came in. That's my journey. That's my story.
Okay. Very interesting life stories coming out here. Just to pick on something you said, Doose, and just throwing it open for the three of you, I don't know who would want to go first, but the point you made about technical jargon in the power sector, I still feel a bit befuddled sometimes by the technical jargon. Power sector people speak in a certain way. They love their acronyms. That's number one. PSPP, WSS, NNNN, NESI. And, it doesn't matter who is in the room. They just go on. NERC, this, that. And those are all acronyms. They're not English language. Right? And I've had younger women in the sector sometimes come up to me when we go to make a pitch for the Women on the Grid Hub to talk about how lost they feel in the sector. I mean, they're working in the sector because they need an income. That's where they got a job. But that it's kind of challenging to navigate your way around, to feel your way around as a young person, but especially as a young woman. I'm just wondering whether any of you felt that way when you first got into the power sector, and how, okay, Adeola's hand is up. And whether you still, because I still feel that way sometimes. I don't know. Adeola, your hand is up.
Yes. I mean, I certainly did, and I still do, especially when you didn't study engineering or never been in that technical space. When you just get in, I remember when I just started in the power sector, I was always, like Doose mentioned, I'm on my phone in meetings checking, what does this mean? What does the acronym mean? What did they just say? But what helps me is just that continuous learning. And to be fair, look, even the technical folks, even they continuously learn, because there's so much innovation happening in the space. There are different things coming up.
It's very dynamic, absolutely.
Very dynamic. So continuous learning for me, collaboration. The beauty about working in this space is that you work with a lot of experts. So I'm never afraid to ask questions. Sometimes I'll tell my colleague in the office, what does that mean? Oh, you're the technical guy. Can you break this down in a way that makes sense for my finance head to relate to it? So that collaboration with experts, continuous learning, and just asking questions, being open-minded. Yeah, that's what helps me.
Yeah, I guess that makes a lot of sense, that if you're new in the sector and you're young and you feel kind of lost and left out, don't be ashamed to ask questions. Look for someone you can talk to, ask questions, have an inquiring mind. That's one of the ways to settle in. Aisha is nodding. Was that your experience as well?
Yes, I totally agree with everything you've said. Like, even for me that study engineering, like every day you're learning something new, except you're perfect, which is almost impossible. Every day someone else is throwing a new acronym, and like you said, you have to be open to learning from people around you, and that's just the key to like growing and moving forward. So that was the same thing I was just gonna say, but you've already said it all. So perfect.
Yeah. I mean, the point about one of the things that I also find very striking right now is how many professionals from other spheres, like the power sector or the global energy sector, is no longer exclusively for engineers now. You have lawyers, you have accountants, you have everybody, and you can actually do well in that space, coming with what you have. And then with that mindset to improve. Doose, were you ever embarrassed by this, not knowing what the technical jargon meant? I mean, I can think of a few oops moments that I've had working with power sector people. Do you recall any?
No, I don't think I was necessarily embarrassed. I just saw it as a learning process because the type of person I am is I always feel like the things I cannot do are just the things I cannot do yet. I know that with reading, with learning, like you can always get better. So I just knew it was a matter of time and I was going to get better and I was going to figure it out. So I didn't see it as embarrassing at all.
Okay. The other thing I'm wondering is, one of the things I've observed in the power sector in particular is when you talk about women or you talk about gender or you talk about inclusion, automatically there's a gender division of labor. There's a way the sector puts women in the box where you discuss renewables and off-grid issues. But when you begin to talk about experts in other aspects of the power sector, most of the people you find at the table are the men. Have you noticed that? And do you understand why that is so? I've always found it a bit perplexing because I've met some very dynamic, very smart women who can speak to issues. For instance, the women on the podcast with me today. But have you noticed that though? And what do you think is going on? Any thoughts, Aisha?
Yeah, Stella, it is quite intimidating, as a woman generally in almost all the sectors in Nigeria. It is male dominated. So in the power sector specifically, I have noticed, and we all know that the men do dominate. And I find it striking because women are so smart. I'm here with, people like Adeola, people like you, leaders.
Thank you.
I feel like depending on the environment that you find yourself, sometimes you're not lucky enough to be exposed to meeting women in leadership, and that will put you in a box because everyone that you're seeing that is in your
space,
company, in your
absolutely.
space is all men. So you just feel like, okay, I just need to stay at a certain
level.
levels. For example, here in UKNIAF, this type of platform, Women on the Grid, where women are coming up, women in the profession doing great things, speaking, reaching out to different younger women to see that you are able to come here and, try and grow and, show your skills, and not be put in a box, But yeah, I do agree that it is very intimidating as a woman here. Yeah.
So what I even hear you say is it's also partly a socialization issue. That's sort of like the social context in which we find ourselves. So everything tends to sort of play out in that way. Thoughts, Adeola?
So I have a different perspective to it, really. Like Aisha mentioned, the power space particularly has been dominated fully by men for several decades now. And so women are currently coming to the table gradually. And so the renewable space feels like the edge, really. The on-grid is kind of in the middle, if you look at it that way. And so in women trying to get into the space, we're inching closer. The renewable space seems like the easiest way to get in first, and mostly because there's this narrative about rural electrification, which the renewable and the mini grids bring in, which is kind of women-centered, women-focused in some form. I'm not sure where that narrative came from, but there's the assumption that women are because of their role as homemakers, they're the ones that really, the entire idea about rural electrification is centered around women. So I feel like maybe for a lot of women, that's the easiest place they think they can get in first before pushing further into the on-grid space, because I'm trying to get the men out is tough. You have to get a seat at the table and then start pushing gradually. That's what I think.
Okay, I'm not sure we're trying to get the men out though. I think it's more of so move over, let's share this space. We have something to offer as well. I remember, but it's interesting you say that because I remember a colleague of mine who decided to run for political office once, House of Representatives, and she was all rearing to go and on fire, and she had everything set up, the campaign office. She was so sure her ground game was her A game, and she was going to, and she came to see me, and I asked her one question. I said, I'm running, you've heard I'm running? I said, yes, congrats, sis, go. And then I asked her one question. I said, so who are you planning to displace? And she looked at me And she said, displace? I'm not displacing anybody. I just want to get in. And I said, no, to get into that seat, you're displacing somebody.
Correct.
And then she mentioned the name of the person she was planning to, in quote, displace. I said, aha. So, Doose, what do you think? Do you think that having this thing about more women when you talk about rural electrification, you talk about off-grid work, has that been your own experience too, as someone working Nextier? Have you noticed this trend, and what are your own reflections as to why it's so or why not?
Okay, maybe just building on what Adeola said. In my opinion, the issue of women's representation in the power sector, or just having more women lean towards the off-grid or in the off-grid space, can largely be traced back to societal constructs. For so long, for decades, we had a generation of women believe that certain courses, or would I say professions, were meant for men. It is assumed that women are soft, hence the technical courses may maybe be a struggle for them. And a narrative has been passed down for so long that I think we started to believe it. And so now we have a whole generation of women that avoided certain courses like, say, engineering, medicine, not because they lacked the ability, but because societal expectations just steered them away. So maybe that's why when women come into the sector, they tend to lean towards the off-grid, which is assumably less technical and an easy entry point. It is only recently that women have started getting a seat at the table. More women are now pursuing these male-dominated fields, and we are beginning to see a gradual shift in representation. I remember when I was still in uni, you would go to an engineering faculty or department and you would just see maybe 3 women or just a handful of women. However, I think that in recent times, the scales are sort of tilting, although we still have a long way to go to achieve some form of equality. But I believe that slowly we are changing the narratives and more women are beginning to take on these technical courses and professions. I also remember when I first joined the sector, I used to go to meetings and I would do some sort of mental head count of how many women were in the room.
It was quite, I'll just do a mental head count.
I still do that actually. Sometimes the count is 0.
Yes.
For power sector meetings. It's so typical.
Yes. And because now people are more open-minded, I would say, from what I've observed, I feel like people are more open-minded to hiring qualified women. We now just need these women to begin to see that they can do those courses, they can get into those technical spaces. And I feel like with time, everything will just balance itself out. That's my opinion.
I like the optimistic tone. I like and you may well be right. I remember my state of origin. Once upon a time, the State Ministry of Justice, they put this affirmative policy thing in there where they said, okay, recruit more women because the place was dominated by men. And then they started recruiting. And before you know, it was sort of like reverse discrimination. So the place was now womaned by women. It wasn't manned by women. It was now womaned by the women. Like they were all over the Ministry of Justice. So it became a bit of a head scratcher for everybody. This Ministry of Justice got everywhere, So yeah, possibly. But I want to get back to the point about, because I think that's an interesting take on it. When Adeola said the dominance of women when you talk about rural electrification and off-grid space, it's a way to get in first. I don't get the sense that a lot of the women that work there are there because they see it as a transitionary arrangement or as a trajectory to get into the middle of it's like comfort. And that's not judgment or criticism. I mean, somebody has to work there and it's possible some people's, that's where they're supposed to be. But I don't get the sense that they see it as a transition. It's in a way, it's as if, this is our niche, we're happy here. And the men can sit in the on-grid space and have the conversations. So for me, that's where I have a bit of a red mark or a question mark as to whether they actually... Adeola is pointing at Aisha.
Aisha was raising her hand.
Okay.
That's why.
You want to respond to that?
Yes.
Okay, please.
I feel like it's not like necessarily like the yes and no, in the sense that yes, that's like the start, how they've like positioned women to start, get into the like renewables, but also it's more of the like that's like the soft part,
Absolutely.
They've made that the soft entrance, like they've put like women on the stage of women are soft, you guys should start from the renewables sector. And if you're in a rig, maybe in an oil rig or on the grid, on the on-grid sector, it just seems like that's where the men should be, like doing the hard stuff, doing in the plant, it doesn't look like a place for like women to be. And that's just so unfair to me, because so many times people have reached out to me, even, like Doose was saying, you'll be in a room and you just see like 3 or 4 like women. And this was my experience as well. Many of the women would rather be pushed to go to maybe study biomed engineering, like the software engineering. Don't do electrical. Electrical is for men.
Which is what you studied, yeah?
Yes, and so, those social constructs, I feel like those are the basis, like that is the problem. That is the problem. Like women should not be put in, because like the only difference between a man and a woman to me is the insides. Your brain is so sharp. Your brain is so smart. You can do everything you want to do. So don't feel intimidated, which is what a lot of like females are feeling now, So yeah, like I just feel like that's what I needed to say. Yeah.
Awesome. I think Aisha has really said it. It all boils down to the societal constructs that we've all been conditioned to, and so it very well may be that that's the reality of why they're in that space. It's the softer side. It's easier. It's
comfort zone.
Really, I don't know that. For me, I feel like the only solution to that problem, because it's a societal construct. That's why it's important for this STEM advocacy for catch them young, because look, I don't know that you can change people that are already grown with a certain mental construct in mind, but I think what we can do for the next generation is catch them young, enable them understand that there are no boxes. You can be anywhere, you can do anything, you are needed in the core sector, in the core part of the sector, not just the softer side because you're a woman. And so for me, I think we just have to find a way to change the narrative going forward. I'm not sure how much you can achieve with the current mindset, because majority of women are already in that mindset, and whether you like it or not, it's how they've been conditioned. So I think my hope is in the next generation, or the upcoming generation.
We should all go and stand in front of trailers on the road, though, according to Adeola.
No, not necessarily.
Doose, what do you think?
I partially agree with what Adeola has said. I believe that the real hope lies in the next generation, just because changing the narrative for adults already shaped by these societal constructs can be sort of challenging, although it's not impossible. We can, through programs like the Women on the Grid initiative, catch the next generation young and help them see that there are no limits to their potential. They can take up courses in STEM and just fill up these male-dominated fields, and then we can just take it up from there.
I have a slightly different take, though. Aisha, you want to say something? Yeah. Okay. No, I'm just saying that, even here we are with what we're doing, right? I wouldn't throw my hands up and give up on today's generation either, because there's still Amazons in the space that are doing what they do. And just to clarify, the point is really to be the best of what you are where you are. There's absolutely nothing wrong with a woman working in the renewable space. It might be that's where she's supposed to be, and that's where she'll make impact and change lives and do some of the things that you've all said that even made you get into this space in the first place. I think the issue really is that, so if a woman actually has what it takes to operate in another capacity, then she shouldn't be excluded from that because of social constructs around what is doable and what is not. She should have the space and the support to navigate her way around that area, regardless of the fact that she's a woman. But it's interesting when we're having the conversation about soft part of the sector and hard part of the sector. I remember once upon a time in this country, cassava was a female crop, female in quotes, and it was, my late grandmother was a cassava trader, small cassava trade. That was what she did. She had her gari making machine in her backyard, And then the international community, the world began to pay attention to cassava, and the rest of the world started, the demand went up. And the last time I did an agric-focused assessment, cassava had become a male crop, and more men are now farming cassava than women. So there's a way that the gender division of labor happens, right? Even when something starts off being the soft side, before you know it, if it's something that gathers global attention, before you know it too, even that soft side becomes both soft and hard side at the same time. Do you agree?
Absolutely. I fully agree with that. And just to emphasize that, it's not all doomsday for the current generation.
Thank you. Good to know.
Yeah, and
we shouldn't stand in front of trailers yet.
And I think it's really, as more women that are able to break that shield of sort, and they pave the way for other women to come in as well. And I think that's really the fight that's really what we've all been fighting for, having a seat at the table. So for every woman that gets a seat at that table, they pave the way for other women to be brave, so even if you didn't think you had it in you, but you're thinking, if Stella is there, I can get there. So I guess that's where the part of the mentorship also comes in. And so there's hope. There's hope.
Thank you very much. Gosh, I've been here for a minute. You agree, Aisha?
Yes, I agree, because I was just about to say, you literally just took the words out of my mouth. For someone like me that's young and just starting my career, I'm very lucky to be here at Tetra Tech, where I'm seeing women in leadership roles, like people like you, Adeola, and many people here, that are in leadership roles. I feel like the change starts now, because I feel like when you're there already, you, like Adeola said, you pave the way for, you choose the person based on what they have in their head, not based on their gender.
Absolutely.
You will pave the way for women like me and younger women even, you can do it. Don't feel intimidated. I'm here.
Absolutely.
Feel comfortable. Women on the Grid Hub, for example, these conversations are so important. So we just have to keep on having them.
I agree.
And reaching out to younger women and having those types of,
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Let's have a bit of fun. Doose, 2 buzzwords from the power sector that every meeting you go for, they must say these 2 words or 2 phrases.
Energy transition. Energy transition and tariffs.
Okay. Those ones, okay, yeah, fairly, yeah, I agree. Adeola?
Climate finance.
Climate finance. You've done 3.
I mean,
okay.
Well, energy transition was my first, because that's like the buzzword of the season for everybody globally. I think in Nigeria recently, our buzzword has become the IRP.
Yeah, you would say that from UKNIAF. Yeah, right.
No, actually not. A lot of states are trying to do the IRPs, the national sector is trying to do the IRP. So yeah, buzzword. Can I reflect on that a little while?
Okay,
Aisha
you can.
answers?
Does Aisha have any from being around us here?
Subnational electricity markets, that's so in now.
So in, I agree. I agree.
What the buzz is all
There was one that used to baffle me when I first came to the sector. Cost-reflective tariff. Cost-reflective tariff. I said, okay, what does this mean? Oh, please, what does it mean? And then someone had to, like we said at the beginning, it's always good to ask questions. Don't hear it and just shy away. That's the way to, because by the time you talk to someone, you now find out that there are other people that are as lonely as you feel in that room, and they're ready to just share. Then grid collapse. How can we forget grid? The grid is always collapsing. Grid collapse. So which other? I can't even think of any other. Does anyone have any other ones?
Decentralized mini grids.
Interconnected mini grids. Let's think of 2 more.
Okay.
Buzzwords from the power sector. What else is their buzzwords? What's that one they used to explain the ISO split, the TCN? There's a way they call it. There's something they call
unbundling of the TCN.
Unbundling.
Yes.
Hey, that unbundling used to bother me, because I'm like, what are they bundling and unbundling?
Then you hear the TSP, you hear the ISO, and you're like,
Let's do acronyms now. 3 acronyms: TSP, ISO, NERC. What's again? Hey, there's one new one: NEPSIP. Oh, that's the new policy.
Yes.
Is it NIPSIP? What are the other ones? Buzzwords, power sector. And you're at the NERC. And they just throw these buzzwords as if everybody should know what they're talking about. REA. Morphe.
Oh my days. Morphe. I literally had to, even the other day, I just messaged Adeola. I was like, is Ministry of Finance Incorporated the same thing as Federal Ministry? Because these words, they're just all over.
And they say them, they don't even, it's even on the UKNIAF program, sometimes they try, the power sector people, the technical experts, they just go on. They forget that everybody else, you need to. So no wonder people come in and they're terrified, how am I ever going to catch up? Everybody, I remember one of the first UKNIAF meetings I sat at, the first NIAF meeting I sat at, everybody sounded so smart. I'm like, but what am I doing here really? Because my background is law, this was new. And that's another thing. I had some experience extensive experience doing gender-specific work, but that's another thing that's pushed into the soft sectors: maternal mortality, girl-child education. You just talk about gender there, but don't come to the power sector and mention that word. It doesn't fit. And then I said, okay, why can't we bring this thinking into this sort of hard, the one they call the hard sectors, which is part of the motivation for people like me working in spaces like UKNIAF. It's just partly because of that. So, last question to go around. What would you say to your younger self? 3 things, Aisha.
Okay, so first I would say is don't be afraid of trying. The worst thing that can happen is failing, Aisha. The worst thing that can happen is failing, because, the thought of not knowing if something is going to work or not, that, doubt in your head, like, okay, how about, what if I did that? What if, but you see, if you try and you fail, you know that you've done this, you move on, you pick yourself up and you move on to the next thing.
Absolutely.
That's one of and also another thing I'd say to myself is don't do what you think you should do, rather do what you want to do. Let me expand on that. If it's Stella, like, we find ourselves in spaces just doing what we think, what everyone tells us we should be doing, rather than what we truly want to do and feel fulfilled in doing. So that's something I'll tell myself, like, don't put yourself in a box because of what everyone else thinks you should be doing. Do what you want to do, Aisha. So
completely agree. I love the don't be afraid of trying bit. It's something I say, for instance, with food. I'm not an adventurous eater at all. I think our colleague Toju would tell you that I'm not the type to, this looks, let me just try it. No, please just give me the one I know. Do you have ogbono soup there with eba? Do you have jollof rice? Don't bring all these things I don't know. But then I keep saying to myself, it's nice to try. At least when they're talking about it, you can say, I tried it, but I didn't like it. As opposed to, what is that? I've never tried it before. So absolutely right. Yes, Doose, your younger self, 2 things, 3 things.
For me, I would say to my younger self, just say, take more risks. Step out of your comfort zone more often, because along the way I have realized that there is so much power in stepping outside your comfort zone. All of those opportunities that you feel that they are the scariest, they often lead to like some of the greatest growth. I will tell myself not to hold back because I feel unqualified or because I feel unsure. Case in point, my entry into the power sector, all of the skills that I've picked up, all of the people that I've met, all the things that I have learned, like, I will forever be grateful that I walked this path because I took a risk. I was unsure. I had no prior experience, but I came in anyways, and I've been figuring it out along the way. Something else is just say your voice matters. Sometimes we think that because we don't have as much experience as the next person, that our perspectives are not valuable, or they're not as important, but that is not true. So I think I'll speak up more often. I will share my ideas. I'll just be bold. So I think those are the 2 things that I will say to my younger self.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Adeola?
I think I'll probably just echo some of the things that have been said, because for me as well will be just go for it. Take the chances. You never know. When I was trying, I wish I'd gotten in earlier. And I think it was the fear of, what do I even know about the power space? I'm from a finance background. How am I going to thrive here? So even when I was accepting my first job in the power space, I remember that I was interviewing and I kept thinking, and I was asking for a particular position, so we're negotiating back and forth, and I kept thinking, maybe I should just take the lower position, because let me not go and disappoint myself when I get in there, So that's one of the imposter syndrome is real, especially for women across different sectors, really. And as you get, and it gets worse as you get up the ladder. People think it gets better, but it actually gets worse, because you're constantly thinking, some days I'm like, what am I doing in this room? Like, what do I know? But I've learned over time to tell myself that you didn't get here by mistake. No, everybody can be wrong. There must be something, that's putting you out there. So for me, it will be, ignore the noise in your head and just go for it. Take the chances. Be open to learning. Be open to making mistakes and getting better. Yes, and for me, secondly, I would say I would seek out mentorship earlier in my career. I think they're very important. They help to shape the course of your career journey earlier, because these are people that have walked the path that you're trying to walk, and so they're able to hold your hand and help you to achieve what you need to quickly, at least kind of like guide you as a mentor on things that you're still struggling with as a young person in the career. So mentorship early on in my career, I would say.
Amazing. Thank you very much. And to echo one of the statements you made where you said, everybody can be wrong, there must be something. I just want to affirm that there is something. Not just with you, but with all of my guests on this episode. I work with these young ladies and they're truly amazing. There would be no Women on the Grid hub functioning, no What's with the Grid podcast functioning without the support of these three. So thank you very much, three of you, for being here. And it's been great having you. And to our listening audience, thank you for spending time with us today. I'm sure you've picked up a few learning points, and make sure you join us the next time on What's with the Grid, a conversation with women in the power sector. A big thank you to the team at Nextier who are giving us the red, yellow and green cards and who will tidy up the podcast for broadcast. Bye everyone, until the next time.